Hey, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, more odds, and more lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. Hey, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken. Happy Friday. I'm so excited to have Alison Lukan back on the show. This is going to be a two-parter, so we'll get a little bit of Alison today, a little bit of Alison next week. We're going to quickly hear from Dave Hakstol regarding leadership and captaincy in particular, and then we head over to Alison Lukan, who is coming to us live from Kraken Community Iceplex to give us a lay of the land for day one, which was yesterday, of training camp for the Seattle Kraken. That and more on this episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
All right, Seattle fans, we have a pretty jam-packed show, so we're going to get right into it. Again, yesterday was day one of training camp with the full roster. If you missed yesterday's episode, we talk a little bit about that. I came on after session 2. Also give you a little bit of a tease of playback, which is something that we're going to be using throughout the season. But also, Dave Hakstol spoke to media. He talked about leadership. A lot of people wanting to see a captain named. After we traded away our first ever captain, here's what Dave Hakstol had to say about leadership and the captaincy for the Seattle Kraken.
What are your thoughts on naming a captain?
It's something, honestly, we haven't sat down and talked a lot about between Ron and myself. Right now, we've got our 4 guys with the A's. And if we decide to make a change and name a captain, whether it be through preseason or throughout the season, we'll do that. But right now, I'm really comfortable with the group that we have, and just the continued ability to grow our leadership group from within, inside of this dressing room, and then having that carry itself out onto the ice.
So it sounds like we might have to wait, folks. I know a lot of people are expecting Yanni Gourde to be named captain. He's an alternate captain. I'm okay with waiting. I know some people aren't. I'm totally fine with this. I think that there are things that we need to see grow and develop. And I think organically a captain will shine. So I'm okay with this. Anyway, speaking of leadership, speaking of amazing talent, speaking of I don't know, because I don't have another good transition. I just love to love up on Alison. She is someone that keeps me level-headed while also inspiring me in my darkest moments. And you're going to hear all of this again as I introduce her in just a little bit. But we have Alison Lukan on the show. So let's kick it over to my interview with Alison. All right, Seattle hockey fans, as promised, we are here with Alison Lukan. I cannot believe you are back on the show. What a difference a year makes, Alison.
I actually did my hair this time, Erica. Last time I was in a hat. I mean, it was a whole.
I mean, you're fancy now, so people know you.
Well, people know you, so, and I know you, which is the real feather in my cap. So,
oh, you are the sweetest. Truly, since we're here, and also it's my show, so I get to do what I want. It's so important in life. I give these wellness tips at the end of the episode. So we're going to start with this one, but it's so important in life to have people who truly support you. And little humble brag here, but Linda Kahn was on the show and she said something. She was talking to a hockey player, I forget his name right now, but she said that he said, instead of trying to prove people wrong, he really focuses on proving people right. And you are one of those people that when I step up to a microphone or when I do something in the NHL in particular, I'm like, I want to make sure I'm proving Alison right, because you've always believed in me, Alison Lukan, and I appreciate that so much.
Well, listen, I mean, you're one of those people where the talent has shown through from the first second I ever got to know you, and it's just taken people time, and it's still taking people time to give you the opportunities you deserve. Hire Erica and Black Rosie Media for all the things. But it is my great opportunity and pleasure to give you snaps all day, every day, because you are just crushing it in everything you do.
Columbus. And of course, now there's a mutual from your time covering Columbus and now the Seattle Kraken. So what can we expect from Oliver Bjorkstrand?
Well, I think I'm showing my fan card perhaps a little bit too much already since the trade went down. I mean, first and foremost, this is exactly the kind of move that puts Ron Francis in having one of the best summers, in my opinion, of all 32 teams. He built up cash reserves of actual cash, but he also had those draft picks as capital. And when another team got in trouble, like Columbus, because Johnny Gaudreau went there, he had the resources to acquire one of the best players, I think, on Columbus's roster. Shayna Goldman, who we both know very well too, and I have talked for years when we're doing fantasy work, as she continues to do, of how Oliver Bjorkstrand was a hidden gem. When we were in Columbus, we talked about how he didn't get enough respect for how he plays. And this is a player who is really sneaky good. He's known for his shot. He has a tremendous release. But what he's done is really round out his game to be effective in terms of getting the puck back onto his team and his teammates' sticks, even in the defensive zone. So when you talk about a Kraken team that wanted to score more goals, but wants to keep that identity of where they started last year, this is just such a great player to bring in. And we had the opportunity to talk to him at Media Day, and he's, in my opinion, legitimately excited to be here in Seattle.
What's it feel like coming into a team that just got done with its inaugural season?
It's exciting. Definitely want to be part of building something special here. Seems like there's a lot of excitement around the city with this team, and we want to be good this year, so it's going to be fun.
What do you think is the main thing that you can bring to this team?
Hopefully a little bit of goal scoring, but overall just play a good two-way game. Honestly, just help the team in any way I can. We, as a group, want to have a good season, definitely better than last season. So it's a process, but it's just got to keep building on it.
That's so important too. So he got the first goal in the scrimmage today, Thursday. So I'm excited to see what he can do as he finds his place on this roster.
Oh, I love that. I love also just hearing that this is a player that can make things happen for the Seattle Kraken. And I think from my perspective, we had difficulty as a team last year, kind of really being able to carry the puck or win the puck back in all three zones at times. And that can obviously stifle an offense and make problems for you on the defensive side of things. So if Bjorkstrand's going to be sneaky, I kind of like that. I like that a lot. I think that is definitely something that we can use. Okay, so I knew you had some stuff there on Oliver. So before I broadened it, I figured we could go to your expertise there. But all right, Seattle fans, can you tell I love talking to Alison? Can you see why I love talking to Alison? We're going to come back with more from Alison Lukan. But right now, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor, and that's Bet Online. Now, betonline.net is your number one source for football betting into this season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and more. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all sports wagering information, live betting, up-to-the-minute scores for every single sport out there, of course, including the National Hockey League, boxing, MMA, and on and on. Head to betonline.net. You can use your mobile device, you can use your laptop, your desktop, whatever you got, to learn more. Bet Online is where the game starts. We're going to get more into leadership with Alison coming up on this episode of Locked On Kraken. Let's head over to my interview. So I want to think about, though, we had the draft and Shane Wright and Matty Beniers coming in and, Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand and some of the other things. But Alison, for you, what have been some of the storylines as you've been following along and preparing for content for the Seattle Kraken fans? What are some stories that maybe you're excited to dive deeper into that maybe are falling a blip or two under the radar as we head into preseason? Well, we're in training camp right now and then head into preseason and the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, a little sneak preview here. This is why this is the best Locked On Kraken show. This is Listen to Erica. But
Had to put it in there.
that's right. But no, I think some of the things, I mean, there are some things that I think are obvious to all of us. We want to see how goaltending rebounds, particularly because there's some new faces there.
Yes.
You know, common sense wise and honestly, mathematically, it's impossible to not imagine it gets better this year. That's just how this, I mean, seriously, that's just how it has to work. Some other things I'm watching too is I am watching how, this is a long-term thing though, is how rich this organization is becoming at its roots. This is not necessarily a group of players that's going to win the Stanley Cup next year. But this is an organization that is taking the proper steps to continually improve, and maximize when they get to their window of opportunity. And so what that means specifically is we look at Shane Wright, we look at Matty Beniers. There's every reason in the world to be excited about these two guys. But there's also every reason in the world to understand that they are still developing. And so to watch how that progress goes, how they handle it, I mean, there's all kinds of different things that will happen to these two players. Matty Beniers was a point per game guy last year. Very few players are that in the NHL. So understanding and managing expectations for the players themselves too, within their own mind, so they don't drive themselves crazy. And then how they work to continue to become even better. And the flip side of that is, even though they're going to continue on their development path, sneaky key to success for any Stanley Cup winning team, in my opinion, is to have strong center depth. And they've got this. I mean, you can look at teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins. They got Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin through the draft. This is how this stuff starts, people. And to have two young players who play center is just so huge. So I'm going to be watching the center depth. It's great to have too many centers. How does that shake out? Who plays where? What is, this is something Alexander Wenberg talked to us about yesterday as well. What is the identity of each team, each line, because each of our centers is a little bit of a different animal. And that's important and good. Looking at that. And then I think another thing I'm watching that I am familiar with from my time in Columbus too is, what does leadership start to look like on this team? Right now, there is no captain. There may not be a captain. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. Leadership can look different, and what happens inside the room isn't necessarily what we as fans see or know. So watching this group evolve, regardless of who has a letter, who doesn't have a letter, what letter it is, I think this is a group of leaders that's really excited and focused on taking the group to the next level. So watching that's going to be interesting for me too.
Ooh, so many great things. Rich at the roots. I love that. And I'm glad you mentioned leadership, because, you know, I completely geeked out over your article last year where you broke down the Tuckman's model. I loved that so much. So I want to come back to leadership, but there's something else that you mentioned, and I want to talk about centerman depth, because again, one of the big storylines that definitely not a blip or two under the radar is Shane Wright. And of course, even the circumstances by which Shane Wright came to Seattle in the draft, dropping from, as many people expected him to go, really top 2, 3 even would have been a little bit of a shocker, I think. But so you were at day one. You were able to see the rookies hit the ice as well. What are you seeing from Shane Wright, and how he might fit into, as you mentioned, the leadership that's already started to establish in Seattle?
Yeah, and we were joking about this, Erica, before we went online. It is day one, so it's everything and it's nothing. So,
Right.
And again, this is kind of what I was saying too earlier, is that put yourself in Shane Wright's shoes, right? Like, this is his first day on the ice at an NHL training camp, something he has worked for since he's been a little kid. So this is going to be an acclimation period for him. So what did I see? I saw a player who was holding his own, looked just fine, which is exactly what you want to see from a guy like that in his first day of his first NHL training camp. Again, we want to watch that progression. We want to watch if and when he gets into some preseason games, what does he look like in there? But yeah, I mean, everything and nothing all at once. He was present. He didn't look out of place. We're good.
There you go. He showed up, so he didn't get fined.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Seattle hockey fans, as always, for making Locked On Kraken your first listen of the day. So I'm so excited that I'm the first ever host of Locked On Kraken, and I'm glad that you have stuck it out with me. But we are back to 5 days a week, and I cannot wait. We're going to have some amazing, amazing coverage, including more Alison Lukan. But we're going to end this episode talking a little bit more about Alison Lukan and her role. So we got right into it. I wanted to get you to the part where we talk about training camp, since we're in training camp right now. But let's take it back. Let's learn a little bit more about Alison's role. So like the list, I feel like it's not that it feels like it expands. Like everything just like is expanded and amplified. You're just like, it's just like Alison's doing all of the things now. I mean, because you're still doing the podcast.
That's right. That's right.
With Sarah and Shayna, you're still doing the analytics work with the Seattle Kraken. But there's going to be an expanded role. First of all, we're glad we get you back. So we get.
I'm very glad. Yes.
I mean, come on, because before, like you said, what a difference a year makes. Like we weren't even there yet with a full announcement of what you were going to be doing for Seattle. We just knew that you were dabbling. You were dabbling at the time. Then we got to see some of the work that you were doing on the broadcast. You stepped into the booth. I mean, amazing. So what can we expect from Alison this season, season 2? Of our favorite hockey team here on Locked On Kraken, the Seattle Kraken.
Well, I must say too, I am so excited to be back. This is such a great organization and a great group of people to work with. We were talking about one of our favorite people, Everett, who does the play-by-play on radio. Listen to his call, my friends. But just so many great people. But this year, hopefully, it'll just be a little bit more of the same. Going to continue to bring analytics topics this season on a weekly basis, so we can maybe do some deeper dives, continuing to bring you some game analysis, and then staying with the pre, post, and intermission shows. It was a pleasure to fill in for JT, but he's the GOAT. So I was just holding that seat for him till he came back. So that was a lot of fun, but just hoping to do more of what I was doing and just bring the best to the awesome fans who stuck with us through what was a rough season. So we just want to continue to do right by them.
I heard you on one of our sibling shows here on the Locked On podcast, but you were talking on Locked On Flyers that sometimes in a difficult season, on what can be a difficult season on the ice for the players, that it almost gives more opportunity for storytelling. Like, break that down. Like, how have you experienced that in what you've done before as a writer, and now in this role with Seattle in what was the inaugural season, first time ever doing it all?
Yeah. Woo. No, and I say this with love. I covered the Columbus Blue Jackets, some college hockey as well, but my primary beat was Columbus before coming to Seattle, and they had some years that weren't great. And, I think that is where it's look, it is fun and it is enjoyable to talk about why a certain player is so great, why a team is performing so well, a goaltender, what's behind Sergei Bobrovsky winning 2 Vezinas. These are all great stories and they are fun to tell, but I think we learn more when we have to look at questions like, why isn't the power play working? Why didn't this line combination stick? Why are the Kraken pulling the goaltender, for example? There's bigger questions to ask. And I think that's when we learn, if we don't already know some of the things about this game. And I think even more importantly, for this is what I believe coaches and general managers and even, analytics people who are developing new ways to look at the game. This is when the innovation comes, right? Because you've tried what it didn't work. So now you have to look at what you don't know and come up with a solution that hopefully fixes the issues in front of you. And that's what's fun, I think, is to say, wow, this isn't what we wanted. How can it become that? It's easy to complain. It's a lot harder to come back with a solution.
Thank you, as always, Seattle hockey fans, for making Locked On Kraken your first listen of the day. That will do it for our show, but that is not the end of my conversation with Alison Lukan. If you've been a longtime listener, then you know that Alison and I, she piqued my interest when she mentioned this concept of positionless hockey. I do not like positionless sports, generally speaking, so I invited Alison back to explain positionless hockey and to change my mind about it. So we're going to hear that next week. As always, thank you so much for listening to Locked on Kraken and making us your first listen of the day. Now it's time for you to head over to Locked on NHL. Find out what the other 31 teams in the NHL are doing. If you care. If you don't, that's fine too. Next week, we'll hear more from Alison Lukan. I'm expecting to attend a very special event that's happening right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We'll talk about that. And of course, we'll keep you updated with training camp and as we march on to our first preseason games of the second ever season of the Seattle Kraken. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to each other. Hold fast. Stay true. Let's go Kraken. And enjoy your weekend.